Welcome, everybody, to the Classification Community Group meeting. Today's topic is focused on Windchill classification and our 8-step classification process, including a demonstration. There's two topics that we're going to cover in today's webinar. The first one, we'll be doing a detailed demonstration of Windchill classification and showcasing some of its key capabilities. Then we'll be walking you through our 8-step classification process that will help you jumpstart your classification program. So we'll give you a little view into the future of what classification will look like in Windchill, and then we'll talk about how we can get you there in our 8-step process. Today's speakers, starting with myself, I'm Richard Turner. I'm the president of Convergence Data. And then Nate Beasley, who is our IT systems administrator. He'll be doing the Windchill demonstration. And then lastly, Josh Lindblom, who leads our data services team, will be doing the walkthrough of our 8-step classification process. We have been a partner with PTC as far as classification goes. We are one of their main partners that provides this service. We're also part of the PTC user group, including the conferences. And we run the classification community group, which is today's meeting. A little background on Convergence Data. For the past 20 years, we've been doing classification in the following manufacturing verticals you see in the top right. We provide data services, which includes the tools and resources to help you enrich, cleanse your parts, including your purchase parts, your aftermarket parts, products and images for e-commerce. And once we've done that, we can also help our clients load the enriched data and the classification data into their ERP, PLM, MDM, or PIM system. We also provide a data governance capability, which includes a new part creation workflow, preferred parts, and ongoing data management and classification support. And lastly, we also offer analytical tools to help expose cost savings opportunities that may be from a duplicate part analysis or a cluster analysis that may include supplier pricing analysis. With that said, I'd like to introduce the next presenter, Nate Beasley, and he'll walk you through Windchill classification.
All right, thank you, Rich. So first, we're starting at the homepage of Windchill, and here you can view some general things such as the tasks you have assigned to you, or even the most recently updated parts in your system. Now, what we want to do is shift over to more of a classification focus here. So what we're going to do is we're going to first go into the classification admin module, which is going to be the second from the right in this new pane here in the browse pane. And here, if we go to manage classifications, we'll get a new tab where we can browse our classification tree. So what I'm going to do here is go down through the mechanical fasteners, and I can expand these categories to see their children. And here I'm going to go into cap screws. And here I can view technical details about this category. So for example, I can view the description for it, and I can also view a list of all the attributes on this category as well. And in this view, I can click on an attribute. So for example, I want to look at drive type, and I can find more details about this attribute. So here I can see that it is a string data type. I can also go over to the constraints tab here and see that it is tied to a global enumeration. So this is also known as an allowed values list, list of values, or pick list. Basically, this is going to give users a predefined list of options to select when they're inputting attribute values for parts under cap screws. Also, we can view details on a numeric attribute. So if I go down to length and I view the properties here, I can see that it is a floating point with units data type, and I can view the constraints, which in this case are a valid range. So setting limits on what can and can't be entered here. All right, so now going out of classification admin, we can go to a general user view, and we're going to do that by going to the classification explorer. So in this same pane, if we go over to search and then classification explorer, we can see that same tree view that we had in classification admin. So again, I'm just going to do the same thing here. Mechanical fasteners, screws, and cap screws. You can see the 114. That means there are 114 cap screws in this category. And when I open that up, I can view a list of all the parts here and their attribute values, which you can see towards the right-hand side here. Now, 114 parts is quite a bit. So what we can do is filter these down so we don't have as many to process. So for example, I can change the drive type, which is the second to last column on the right here. I can change that to only show me double hex. And the moment I click this, it will auto update this list. And now I only have parts coming back that match the double hex value for drive type. You can also do the same thing with numerics. So what I'm going to do is clear this filter that I set on drive type, bring all the parts back, and go into length. So here, length is a numeric, and you can use two methods to filter this down. So one is this slider bar here. I could bring this over to about 0.45, 0.045, and then set a maximum. In this case, I'm going to type it in. That's your other option. And then just hit apply. And as you can see, we have had a filtered list of parts that are only within the defined length range that I set. There's another feature here, which is the compare feature. So when you're looking at this list of parts, if it's a case like this and you have maybe 100 or so or more that you're looking at, you can compare attribute values from this list view. But if you were looking at more than just this group on the screen, it's going to become hard to do that. You're going to have to scroll back and forth. So what you can do is you can select the parts that you want to compare. So in this example, maybe I have a part way down here that I want to look at, as well as the three that I checked up above. And if I want to compare those, I can just go to this actions button, go down to compare, and use the compare information function. And if I just select the attributes, then this will give me a printable, easy to read PDF of those four parts that I selected. All right, and then the last thing we want to show is just the global search functionality. So you can search for a part without having to browse through the tree if you know the ID of that part. So I'm going to go all the way back to the home screen that we started with of Windchill. And if I have a part number in mind that I want to use, for example, I'm going to type it in now. I could search for this part from even the home screen and get a result. So this global search functionality can help users to very quickly find what they're looking for if they already have a part in mind. And with that being said, that concludes our Windchill demo section of this webinar. I'm now going to pass it back to Josh Lindblom, who will go over the 8-step process on how we get these parts into Windchill.
Thank you, Nate. I hope everyone enjoyed the glimpse into the future of what your data can look like when using DFR as a software or service. I'm going to walk you through the 8-step classification process, the process we follow here at Convergence Data. It typically starts with loading the legacy data. So this could be your item number, item description, manufacturer part number, manufacturer name. We load that to the database. From there, we go ahead and build the data model. So our software has a module we call Smart Class, where we can define the taxonomy or the data model. To the left of the screen, you see the category hierarchy. So we're starting at the parts, down to the mechanical fasteners, down to screws, and then the cap screws, which Nate was just demoing. To the right, you'll see the attribute profile. You'll notice different data types. We incorporate string, numeric, integer, Boolean, fraction, so you can formulate your data to the specific needs of the business. We can also identify if an attribute is required or key, which means filterable in our system, to make querying very simple and easy, similar to what Nate was demoing in Windchill. From there, we go ahead and start collecting the data. We call this the data harvesting. So you have a data model aligned with a group of attributes for that commodity. We do the enrichment of each of the items. We capture the data, whether it's from a spec sheet or a PDF drawing, and we translate it into a digital format or metadata where we can search and filter on. Step 4 is the data normalization. So we typically capture all the string data and we find a way to normalize it. So the example we're seeing here is the drive type. We have 5 different values. We have double hex, hex, Phillips, slotted hex, and Torx. What this does is it prevents the user from inputting dirty data, such as improper casing or misspellings. This is a pick list or a global enumeration list, as we see in Windchill. So going back to our 8-step process, once the data has been enriched, harvested, and normalized, we are then ready for system validations. They may ask, what type of validations do we run? Well, typically before we send data to the target system, for Windchill, for example, we want to ensure our string data is actually string. We want to ensure that the numerics do not have any, string attributes or string values populated. We want to also ensure that the nulls are being accounted for any required attributes. What about string attributes that are outside the allowed values list? Well, our tool will capture that as well. And then field restrictions. So what we're seeing on the screen is a bunch of pink. And what the pink cells mean is we actually need to do some data cleanup. So it could be a number of issues, right? But typically it's for dirty data. You can filter on the different use cases that I outlined. And the goal here is to resolve those systemic issues before we migrate, because at the end of the day, a user does not want to see a failed import into Parslink. So going back to my 8-step classification process, we have a policy manager. So this is where we can enforce attribute name lengths. We can enforce special characters within the data model. It's like a final check before we migrate the data. Step 7, this is our export manager. So we do have export utility that spits out XML files for classification. So a user would export the classification or the data model, import it into Windchill, and then from there export the item data as a WT part, importable spreadsheet, and load it through the UI. Step 8, this is the finished product where Nate was taking us into the future, where you have that beautiful data model, you have data enriched, and we're ready to go ahead and view and share parts.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for walking us through the 8-step process. I just want to make a note, just I mentioned earlier, we're going to be in Orlando October 3rd through 6th for the PTC user group meeting, which is in October. There's some additional resources. If you have a real interest in this type of work, we recommend you visit our website at the following URL, and you'll see that we have a community group and we have blogs for best practices, and we've got case studies at the following URLs. And you can also join our community group, which is today's meeting. You can sign up if you enter the classification community group link. And if you have questions you want to send us based on today's webinar or anything else regarding classification or Windchill classification, you can reach out at info@convergencedata.com. That concludes our webinar today, and I'd like to thank everybody for joining.